There's a surge in norovirus cases across the UK, the highest they have ever been. And I'm here to try and give you insight into the likely scientific explanations. Some people may think this is sensationalism, but here is the reality. I've got the news for you from Google, looking at norovirus across the NHS. And you can see Daily Mail 7 hours ago looking at bucket virus. Here 3 days ago, rising norovirus cases in West Suffolk. Then you can see hospital issues warning after increase in norovirus patients. This is in Manchester, east of England. Winter pressures in the NHS seem relentless. Norovirus cases high but stable. And you can see this pattern occurring all the way across the country. NHS facing second surge in vomiting viruses cases reach highest level this winter. What is going on, you may ask? And this is where I'm trying to dispel the myths and give you some insights into what is likely to be the cause. In case you haven't come across me, I'm Dr. Philip McMillan. I've been looking at COVID since 2020. I've predicted unique patterns, and I continue to do the research, which gives me a unique insight into what is likely to be going on. Let's make sure we have the statistics correct. So I've got this data from the Office of National Statistics, National Norovirus and Rotavirus Report, Week 8, data up to February of 2026. And you can see as you scroll down here, when you look at cases here, orange is the 5-season average, which is here. Dark blue is the current lab reports. And the gray represents the 95% confidence interval, meaning anything above the gray is beyond anything that we would expect normally. And so you can see here that in week 2, week 4, 5, 6, 7, it's above the 95% confidence interval. This is significant. And we haven't reached the peak yet. So in reality, we are likely to continue to see this rise following this trend. This is not an imagination. This is real. The question is why? Good. Once you understand what happens in terms of the science around COVID and the pandemic, it will all begin to make sense. One of the mistakes that we have made, and I only know this because we are actually doing detailed research to understand the exact molecular steps that led to severe COVID. Now, we're not seeing severe COVID in the same way as we did early in the pandemic, but many people didn't take the time to understand it. We are doing that. And in the process, it's giving you some insights that you wouldn't have seen before. One of the most important insights that we will show in our paper when we eventually publish it is that severe COVID is primarily because of the intestine impacting the lungs. Let me pause so you get that. A lot of people perceive that severe COVID-19 is a lung disease where the viral replication is damaging the lung. Now, that can happen in some cases. If people have COPD or underlying lung disease, they can get a viral pneumonia. But that's not the main pathology in severe COVID-19. It's microclots and a vasculitic pattern in the lungs. And what it seems is that the virus first goes to the lungs, hits the intestines, and the rebound from the intestines is what causes the characteristics we see in severe COVID. Now, this changes everything because when you perceive that it is primarily an intestinal disease with respiratory manifestations, then you can understand why something like what's happening with regards to norovirus would start to make sense. Because you have to remember that COVID is still circulating. It hasn't disappeared. So the question is where is it sitting? And wastewater studies demonstrate that it is sitting in the intestine. Really important for people to understand this. And it explains why people literally can continue to harbor long term inflammatory responses, because if your gut is a problem, you won't get rid of it. And so much so that I'm going to be building a whole course around addressing the gut and addressing toxins related to the gut. If you are interested in that, say yes in the comments for the video so that I'll know to share with you the link within a few days when I put it all together. But this is very important. So here are some points that I think you would be well worthwhile trying to understand. When we look at the intestines, this is what it looks like. Stomach goes to small intestine. This is about 22 feet long. Then it connects to the large intestine. This is the right colon going up to where the liver would be. Then transverse colon across to where the spleen would be. Then the descending colon. And then the sigmoid colon. It's a bit more twisty than this. This colon is about 5 feet long. And it's very important to keep this whole mechanism healthy. And because people have been underestimating COVID, they don't realize that this is where the virus is likely to be sitting and driving pathology throughout the body. Now, when you look at the intestine, it is very well coordinated in terms of what it does. It's very sophisticated. You have a lovely lining. This is light green of mucus that protects the cells that do all the work of absorbing nutrients. It has in it immune cells that help to produce things to keep bacteria at bay. It has underneath here like lymph nodes that are collections of immune cells that help to fight against disease. It is very sophisticated and critical because it absorbs all of the nutrients and it keeps the bacteria in check. Remember, the bacteria are not bad in the gut as long as they don't overgrow, because these bacteria oftentimes help to break down complex things inside the gut and make sure that it keeps your gut healthy and everything moving. The problem is that when we've spoken about COVID, people have considered that it is primarily just respiratory. Virus comes in, infects the respiratory tract, goes down to the lungs. But this is where I've explained about the mucosal immunity, because once the virus breaks through this mucosal immunity and gets into the bloodstream, it will pass through the lymph nodes. And where does it go first? The intestines. This is a real problem. And this is part of the reason why we're seeing these very unusual patterns with intestinal diseases, because once it gets there and causes chronic inflammation, looking something like this, it just bounces around. And here's the problem. If you have COVID sitting in the intestine, bouncing around with bacteria and infecting and reinfecting and just sitting there, and the spike protein is doing all kind of damage in the intestine, leading to inflammation, your gut doesn't feel quite right, but there's nothing specific around it. What then happens is when norovirus comes into this kind of situation, inflamed gut, where the immune system is already under pressure, where you've got a problem because this virus suppresses the interferon response. That's the first responder. So when norovirus gets inside that gut, where the immune system is already dysfunctional, it just rips through it. And what we're seeing is exactly that when it comes to the numbers. When we look at the cases in the UK, it's not just that it is at the highest levels ever. Part of the question is which age group is most affected. And when I go down lower, it will then break it down by the particular age groups. Norovirus lab reports here by week and age. 2025 to 26. And you can see here a 0 to 4 years old. They're plodding along. There is a bit of a rise, but not as much. You can see here 5 to 17 years old, relatively flat. 18 to 64, relatively flat. Where you're seeing the big surge here is 65 years and over. And as long as you understand that this cohort already has a degree of gut inflammation and ongoing issues in a situation where COVID is circulating and causing further inflammation, and then they are already in locations where they are exposed, whether or not in a care home or going through hospitals or something, you see where the problem exists. And this suggests that it's not going away anytime quickly. We are likely to see this continue to be at maximal levels. Look at the numbers here. Not seen this kind of level before. It's beyond the 95% confidence limit consistently since this is here week number 2. Boom, 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 boom. Here is now this week here. We don't know if this is going to be a rapid drop or we're going to see another big surge in the week after. This is indicating that at a population level, there is a problem with the way how the immune system is handling this virus. Remember, norovirus, it takes only a small amount of particles to get from the oral cavity down into the gut and then into the intestine to cause infection. Is very infective. And anything that impacts on the immune system, especially in the intestine, is going to make it have a greater impact. And this is what we're seeing. Because when you look carefully at what happens in the intestine with regards to ongoing COVID, this is what I have it as. Now you're having inflammation with immune cells coming in the region. This is going to dysregulate this whole region. And you can now imagine when norovirus drops in this is already occupied and distracted by COVID bouncing around in the intestine. The answer lies in addressing your gut issues. And I can tell you that from our research with regards to post-COVID chronic pathology, and if you are one of those people or you have a loved one struggling with this, what we found is that you have to address the intestine if you want to get better. If you have got ongoing gut issues, that's where you start. The question is, what do you do? If you are struggling, just say yes in the comments. I'll be able to give you links where you can then find solutions to help address this problem. This is big and it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get worse because virus is still circulating. And guess what? It's sitting in the intestines. My advice generally to people is this. There's nothing more important at this phase, if you want to protect your health, to make sure you protect your gut. Protect it with everything you've got. Watch what you eat. Look at what you drink. If you've got symptoms, especially constipation, please don't accept it. Final point coming up in the next week is my presentation on solving the embalmer's white clots. This is something that I think is critical for people to understand, important information. So if you're interested in that as well, look in the description and click on the link. Look forward to sharing more information with you in the near future. Have a good evening.